There is nothing worse than untapped potentials. If you know that you're made for more, this is the place. I know that every successful person I've ever met has one thing in common. They do not let themselves fall victim to their circumstances. They figure out a way to rise above it. So join me on this journey where I help you to be better, do better, and have better in life and in business. If you're feeling stuck and you're needing some practical tools, some hope to get you to that better life, this is definitely the place for you. Hey everyone, welcome to the Unstuck podcast. I am your host, Lachelle Weemy, and today we get a chance to talk to Jem Minor. You guys, she is a healer of all sorts of things, and you are going to be so inspired by not only her story, but how she's been able to help herself get out of feeling stuck and how she helps other people do the same. So Jem, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to dive into our conversation.
Thanks for having me. I love this topic. I love helping people get unstuck.
Oh, that's awesome, because we are going to be on a journey today for sure. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are and really how you're showing up in the world today? What is it that's lighting you up, on a daily basis, and how you helping people?
Right now, I'm primarily an acupuncturist, so
Okay.
I do a lot of in-person um, healing work. But most of my clients say you're not just an acupuncturist; you need a better title. And so I do a lot more body work and kind of guided meditation and other kind of somatic therapy work with while needles are in. So we're working on
Yeah.
how emotions and trauma that are held in the body can
Yeah.
shift and move and change our experience and change our
Nice.
stories.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that, and then I'm also on faculty at an acupuncture college at Taoist Traditions School of Chinese Medicine, and that is really lighting me up because I get to share all of the depth of this medicine with new students who get to go out in the world and share it
Yeah.
with more people, and it's really fun. And yeah, I'm really enjoying the teaching and sharing that wisdom and getting to go deeper in it myself too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm appreciating how teaching brings up what we already know and helps connect the dots
Yeah.
and enlivens all of us.
I love that so much. And we've chatted before, and I don't know if you remember, but I do anesthesia as part of my many hats that I wear. And
Mhm.
so I understand Western medicine because I've been trained up in that school, but I absolutely am so intrigued by everything that Eastern medicine has to offer. And I am such a nerd about history. I love history and I love brain science. I love energy and all of the things. And it's like one of my favorite authors that I follow, Dr. Caroline Leaf, talks about how science is finally catching up to scripture. And I think that the same can go with the way that medicine has been working for centuries. Just because we don't necessarily have all of the scientific research that tells us exactly how things are working doesn't mean that it doesn't work. And it's really fun how science is now starting to catch up with the things that have been used
Right.
for centuries. And I think it's so cool that we are now finally getting to a point in our lives where we can embrace all of the things that our ancestors have been using for so long. And one of the things that I'm really starting to recognize that I don't think is acknowledged as much in Western medicine as it needs to be is the relation between our brain, our emotions, and our physical health. And I'm
Yeah.
learning, right, that some of our emotions can literally be trapped inside of our body, and up to 80% or more of our disease processes and the ways that our body is performing can be tied back to emotions. And so
Right.
it's so cool what you're doing and how you're integrating everything together so that people can literally start living out their best life. I just love it.
Yeah, and that's what's really inspiring to me too, because we can see those things now. We can
Yeah.
say, "Oh, look, this is that point. This is the acupuncture point where it's more electrically conductive. We can measure that now." But
Yes.
they couldn't 2000 years ago. But
Right.
they still
Right.
knew, like, these are what these
Yes.
points do, and to tune into that energetics, and now to
Yeah.
be able to measure it, and then to see how that actually unfolds in first in myself and then
Yeah.
in my clients is just really
Yeah.
powerful.
It's so cool.
And
And I
there's so much that the body holds and that we can tap into for ourselves,
right.
ideally with, educated guidance,
Yeah, yeah,
um, that we can then work with it so that when we start to get into a place of feeling stuck or trapped or unhealthy in various ways, we
right.
can go into our own bodies and tap into the wisdom that's there and start to
Yes,
unravel like, oh, where are there emotional pieces of this? Like
right.
what is this tied into? And work with it and work
Yes.
with it compassionately.
100%. And one of the things that I love to do is help people to be better so they can do better and then have better in their lives and their business. And when we're not feeling well, it is really hard for us to be and then do the things that we have to do and be in order to have the life that we want, right? And so
Right.
when I work with a lot of people who are really trying to scale their businesses, for example, if they're feeling sluggish, they're more likely to not want to do the things that they have to do to make that, business move forward. And when we really start to think about all the ways that everything comes together, we can get to our peak performance and therefore we can make the biggest impact in the world and then therefore have the life that we really want to go after. And so all of this stuff is so important and cannot be ignored if we're really really trying to become our best versions of ourselves.
Exactly. And that's actually exactly what the class I'm teaching right now is all about the extraordinary meridians that are at the deepest level
Mm. Yeah.
of our being, like our essence,
Yeah.
and how, various stories and patterns can kind of get stuck in
Yes.
those deep levels so that our essence can't express. And
Yeah.
so tapping into these
Mhm.
channels helps to clear out the whatever's blocking it
Yeah.
so that our essence can express, so that we can share our gifts with the world, so that we
Right.
can, meet the people we're supposed to meet and
Yeah.
make the world a better place. And if
Absolutely.
everybody had more access to that depth of their own essence, imagine what the world would be like.
Oh my gosh, right? And
you
so
know?
how would you describe what would you use to define or describe the word essence for people who that's a new term for them?
Well, so it's a translation from the Chinese medicine version is Jing essence, and it's like it's what you come in with.
Yes.
It's your DNA, like your so it's the physical aspects of your DNA, your ancestry, your blood lineage, all of the stuff you've inherited from your
Yeah.
family, both challenging and the gifts. um, and then it's also your own unique energetic blueprint, like what you came in with to learn in this lifetime and what
Yeah.
you came in to do and to offer, what gifts
Yes.
you
Yeah.
have that are waiting to be expressed through you, through this
Yeah.
body, through your work in the world. And
Yeah.
so that's our essence. And then knowing that our essence, um like working with these channels and with qigong and different meditative practices, um it's kind of like working with epigenetics. Like we can shift
Yes.
how that essence, how
Uh-huh.
our genes express. And so
Yes.
you can look at it in terms of genes and you can look at it in terms of energy.
Yes.
They're different ways of talking about the same basic thing in the
100%.
Chinese medicine realm. Well,
Yeah.
where there's that overlap, but we use
Yeah.
different language.
Yeah.
And
And
so it's how do we help those things unfold to the
yes.
best of their potential?
Right, and I would love that because it's almost like for me, it's like our highest self. It's who we are
Yeah,
at the core is our essence, and you just use the word epigenetics, which I think is such a cool scientific field, which is essentially how we can change the way that our genetic DNA is expressed, and we can literally change the way that different sequences are turned on and off just by
right,
what we're doing. So I love that it makes us feel like we're not stuck. Sometimes I think
right,
that we think that, okay, well, my family is a family of alcoholics, so I'm bound to be an alcoholic. My family is a family of, suffers from obesity, so I'm bound to be obese, right? Like
right,
there's so many things that I think we can feel stuck in. And when we really truly embrace the concept of epigenetics, we can start to recognize that there are ways that we can literally train our brain to allow for our genes to express themselves in a way that we want them to be expressed. How would you
right. That's different. That's in
expand
a
that?
different way. And
Yeah,
so I mean, Chinese medicine is looking at the whole body.
yeah,
Like the Western terms tends to focus more on the brain, which is
Yeah.
an extraordinary
Right.
organ
Right.
in
Yes.
Chinese medicine
Yeah.
too, but we're looking at the entire picture,
Yeah.
all of the organs, all of the, circulatory, reproductive systems,
Hmm.
everything,
Yep.
and the whole body is connected.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's how all of those work together, like the whole ecology of the person, that
Hmm.
allows for chi to flow, for
Yes.
genes to express in this way or that way.
Right.
And if something's stuck in your digestive system,
Yeah.
guess what? You're going to have repercussions in other ways, like
Yes.
there's allergies that come in later, or there's different things show up
Mhm.
when other aspects of our body are off kilter. And
Yes.
so that's really the bulk of my work, is how do we light those things up and bring them back into alignment and balance,
Yes.
and also
Yes.
knowing that we're always going to be on some you know path where we're going off over this way, and then we go
Mhm.
back and recorrect, and maybe we're too far the other way,
Yeah.
and we're always evolving and always
Right.
like the practice is really to keep tuning into it, because
Yes.
one of the factors too is that I see people who will have a really strong need for something at some point in their lives, and then they'll get stuck in that. Um,
Yes.
like, I'm going to be vegan, and then like they have a baby and they're trying to breastfeed and they're not making enough milk, they're not getting enough extra nutrients, and maybe they need to shift, maybe they need to add extra nutrients or supplements, maybe they need to try eating some meat. There's like, it's not my place to say that, but I do
Right.
see where people can get stuck in one way of being and think this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And knowing that epigenetics includes how we evolve over time,
Yes.
and like if you move from the desert to a damp, moist climate, you're
Yeah.
going to need different things,
Right. Right. Right.
or vice versa.
Yeah.
And like once you have a baby, it's different. Like once you stop your menstrual cycle, it's different in menopause what you need. And so just helping people to be aware of that whole ecology of
Yeah.
their own inner ecosystem, and then
Right.
how that's in relationship with everything outside of them, and
Right.
then how to work with their essence to express fully, healthily,
Yeah.
in that dance with
Yes.
what's within and what the external
Yes.
environment is
Oh my gosh.
offering.
I love that just the word dance is such a beautiful way, because sometimes I think we take ourselves really too seriously as well. And it's just this way to be in flow. And that's my whole goal, right? Is just be in flow with what I'm supposed to do and not trying, to push things, but to allow for things. And I think that that's what I think of when I think of energy, and being in the prime of where I want to be, and really performing at my best. And I think that, when I think about energy, you've mentioned chi, you've mentioned different things like that. And I really think it's fascinating from a science brain, right? Those of you guys who are like, I don't get this. Like, this is not something that I grew up with, or talking about meridians, or talking about chakras, or talking about blah, blah, blah. But what I think that we all can do is relate to ourselves in the sense of, if you really get those cobwebs out of your brain and you think back at high school science, you learned that atoms are what make up everything, right? We all have the tiniest little building blocks of things called atoms. And those atoms are made up of a nucleus and electrons that rotate around it. Guys, that's energy. Everything that is made up in this entire universe at the very basic level is truly this tiniest little nucleus and these electrons that rotate around it. And so when we think of our body, my bones, my blood, my skin, my heart, all of that at the very basic, if you strip it down to the smallest unit, is still an atom with electrons that rotate around it. And so when we think about that, it makes a lot more sense when we talk about the flow of energy, because electrons and the way that they rotate is energy. And so I just think that it's so fun that we're starting to really understand how, when things get stuck, when things are impeding that flow, how it can make our body not perform, or us not feel our best. And so how would you, as your experience, explain it better than I can when it comes to, how people can understand the importance of just general flow?
I think that's a great basic. It does. It comes back to that kind of atomic energy structure,
Yeah.
and then if you want another, just a more metaphorical
Yeah.
version, it's kind of like if you have a garden hose
Hmm.
and you put a kink in it.
Hmm.
What
Yes.
happens? The water gets blocked, and then eventually, it'll like you release it and it sprays everywhere.
Yes.
Like you know what happens in your life, right? When you have that blockage and it feels like there's all this pressure building up and something has to shift, and then you open that channel and there's this outlet, and sometimes it makes a big mess, you know. um, and or if you look at the cycles of the seasons or at a river flowing, and sometimes there's a lot of rain and the river is high and it can flow, like it can be really high and overflow, or it can flow really smoothly and go through these places of depth with ease and grace because there's enough resource. Or
Yeah.
if the water level's low, then all of the rocks emerge and it's no longer so easy to navigate.
Yeah.
If you've ever rafted or kayaked or anything down a river, I like that as a metaphor too, because we can tune into how much resource, how much water we have,
Mhm.
um, and how much blood and chi and energy we have available to us in a
Yeah.
given moment.
Yeah.
And then that's going to shift how we can navigate. Like, is the water high enough that we can just float right through and go over all the rocks, or is the level really low so our
Yeah.
energy level is low and we see all the rocks and it's really hard
Mhm.
and we have
Yeah.
to get around, and maybe it's fun, maybe it's exciting, some people like it, like that wired and tired, really stressed out, like there's that way of living
Mhm.
that is like running rapids all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
um until something happens and you flip.
No, that's such a
But there
great way to look at it, though. Oh my goodness. That is such a great way to look at it. And I would love for you to kind of give us some insight, Jem, into how it is that you became so passionate about all of the work that you're doing, because I think your story is really remarkable and how you became so passionate about Chinese medicine and what you personally have had to go through in order to really start to utilize some of the tools that you help other people do. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
yeah, I mean, it kind of comes back to the river analogy where um I was I was in college on the crew team, literally on the river. I did not do this intentionally, um, but I was like training 20-25 hours a week, and in school full time and working part
Yeah.
time, and my resources were low, right? So I got injured, um, and I had this back injury, and 5 different doctors did nothing useful for me and said different things. And in the midst of this, in the back injury, when I couldn't move very well, all of this old trauma started coming up. So I started remembering this early childhood sexual trauma that was triggered by being in this, painful kind of frozen state.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was like both the physical and the emotional, and both of those came up at a time that I had not a lot of resource to be present with it. So I went down, I spiraled down. Took medical incompletes that semester, and really had to do a lot of self care. And I had to go back um, to some of the practices. Like I started doing Tai Chi, which is sort of like the Chinese version of yoga, martial arts, the like early pre Aikido sort of movements when I was 11. We'd practice Tai Chi every day, and I hadn't been practicing. I'd been doing this hardcore training, not this gentle flowing movement practice. So I had to start going back to that. And I took a class that introduced me to Chinese medicine, and I just thought this makes sense of the entire universe. And so I went to go see the teacher as a client, um, and I had an initial brief intake session, and then I did this 4 or 5 hour ghost point treatment that was like clearing how the trauma had been held in my body since early childhood, and my back pain was gone
Wow.
like that day. Like the light came back in my eyes. I was excited to be here on the planet again. I could move, like there were still some physical things that took a little bit of tweaking, but like 95% better
Yeah. Yeah.
in one session. And then there was, some follow up sessions, but I just thought this is what I'm here for. this makes sense and it works and it's powerful. And so then I went to Chinese medicine school, and subsequently I've studied a lot of other integrative modalities that
Yeah.
work with Chinese
Mhm.
medicine and kind of bring some of the Western integrative nutrition into
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
and just other resources. And I deepen my qigong practice. That's really about our energy skill and work how we work with energy for ourselves. So there's like going to an acupuncturist and having somebody else help you with your
Mhm.
chi,
Mhm.
which is powerful and really helpful, especially if you're very stuck. Um, Trauma happens in relationship, it heals in relationship. We need
Yeah.
that heart connection and loving presence in those moments, and ongoing.
Right.
But then there's also the energy skill that we cultivate for ourselves, where we can be empowered to work with our own energy, to do meditative practices, breath work, movement practices that really revitalize and nourish our own resources
Mm.
so that we can do that for ourselves and
Yeah.
not just be reliant on external things.
Yeah.
We don't
So
always have access to acupuncture or to
right.
herbs or to extra supplements. But we can do these breathwork practices anywhere.
I love that, and I
um,
really wanna get into some of the things that you do for yourself and what you do for your clients or how you teach them to do some of this stuff for themselves, but I wanna just go back to this analogy real quick because I wanna make sure that I'm understanding so that the audience is
yeah,
also, because I love word pictures. I think that it helps us understand things so much better. So when I think back on when you were in college and you had your back pain, if I'm understanding your analogy correctly, your resources, so your water level was low because you were training so hard.
right,
And then therefore the trauma that you had was almost like the boulder that had been there the whole time, but because the resources were low, the water in the river was lower, all of a sudden now you're bumping up against it where it feels a lot bigger and more impactful and in your way because your resources are
right.
lower. Does
I,
that
I
sound
can't I
right?
can't just I can't go over it anymore. Like when
Yes.
when our resources are low, the things that are challenging, especially from the past, but also in the
Yeah.
present,
Mhm.
if we're not pausing to rest and replenish our resources, and our resource
Yeah.
level drops,
Yeah.
then yeah, there's a big boulder in the way, and we can't get beyond it
And I
until we
think
deal
that
with it. We have to pause and really feel into like what do I do? Do I go over it? Can I go around it? Oh, like maybe I have to, actually work with it and see what this is about
and then
and
release that.
transform it.
Yes, yes, okay.
and build up the resource to be able to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
I think that this is so fascinating, you guys, because I think, you know, this might be a foreign concept for many of you guys, and I can completely understand that and relate to it on my journey of understanding a lot of this and how this works. But the thing is that if you find yourself in life or in business when you know logically that you should be doing X, Y, or Z, right? Like maybe your coach or your mentor is telling you you need to have 5 conversations a day. And for some reason, you just can't get yourself to do it. Even though logically you're like, why am I making this such a big deal? Oftentimes there is that boulder that's down there somewhere. There's something stuck inside of you that is that you're unaware of, right? And
Right.
it's really when that thing keeps coming up over and over again, but you don't even realize it, is really where the work that you do is so profound because like so many of us logically can talk ourselves into doing what we know we need to do, but for some reason we just can't get ourselves to do it. There might be a boulder that's been in there that we don't even know about.
Right. And that's kind of I like there's also this idea in Chinese medicine that we like the stuff that we don't want to deal with, we shove down below the
Yeah.
diaphragm,
Mm,
down to be held in the belt channel, and like it's just a storehouse for all the stuff we don't want to deal with.
right,
And
right.
it's like those boulders that are pushed under the level of the water that we see, and we can just kind of, go over them until we can't.
Right, right.
Until our resources are low or they build up so much that they come up above the water. And we're like,
Yes.
oh, now I actually have to look at this. Now I
Yeah.
don't know what.
Right, right. Oh my gosh. And it's not, I'm guessing an easy process, but what are some of the things that you have done to get yourself to both, be able to transform those boulders, but also to increase your resources. So tell us a little bit about the tools that you would recommend that we start to initiate, either with help or what we can tap into on our own.
Yeah. Well, there's so many. um, I think a couple of the most basic resources I have as a free mini course on my website
Yeah.
called Embodying Courage in Challenging Times,
Okay.
and that includes kind of a spontaneous qigong practice that really helps to clear the energy for yourself. Because like when we encounter a boulder, when we encounter something that feels overwhelming and we get stuck,
Mhm.
we tend to go into fight or freeze mode, and
Yeah.
we get overwhelmed, and we need to move that energy through. And so a really simple, easy to practice qigong movement is a really effective way of moving that through. Kind of like mammals. Hey, we're mammals.
Yeah.
You see a mouse get caught in a trap, and then if it escapes, it does a shake. It shakes it off. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sometimes when people get overwhelmed, they'll actually start to shake
Yeah.
and they freak out like, ah, I'm shaking. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Guess what? If you let your body shake, it helps the energy move.
Yes.
And so some of the Qigong practices let our bodies have that process so that we can move through the fear or other emotion that's kind of getting stuck
Yeah.
and let it go.
Yeah.
Let it transform, let it move through. Um, and there's a video practice on in the free mini course on my website for that. And then kidney breathing is another really easy to practice um, breath work
Okay.
modality that helps
Uh-huh.
to replenish the resources.
Okay.
So in Chinese medicine, we think of the kidneys as kind of like the batteries of the body.
Okay.
And as we if we're stressed, like the adrenals sit on top of the kidneys, right? So
Yeah.
guess what? It depletes that energy. We have all this adrenaline, we're working too hard, we're stressed all the time, and it depletes that resource.
Mm.
And kidney breathing is a really gentle practice that
Okay.
is just bringing energy back to the kidneys.
Okay.
And it's really grounding and stabilizing and nourishing. And it's something, once you learn to do it, you can do it at a stoplight. You can do it, when your kid is sitting on the potty. You can like
Yeah. Yeah.
have just a little moment, because sometimes we don't have the time to go on a whole weekend retreat,
Right.
but we need to replenish. And it's really those micro practices that we incorporate in daily life.
Right.
I'm a mom, so especially for parents
Yeah.
who are also running businesses, and I'm also homeschooling. Um,
Yeah.
to have those practices that both clear energy quickly and replenish quickly,
Yeah.
um, is really how we can stay more in balance and in
Right.
flow on a daily basis. Um, and then, of course, there's also the deeper, longer practices that do take more time to drop in, and which, of course, you'll go to a deeper level of healing with that. And so some of that, I do have a course online, and I teach it in person, where we do deep womb healing work of going into the trauma that's held in the womb.
Okay.
This is specifically for female bodied people,
Okay.
but because we tend to shove everything down there,
Right.
it can get held in that womb space
Okay.
where like the uterus is designed to hold a baby, and it's designed to hold and hold and hold. And then there's all this research now about intergenerational trauma getting
Mhm.
passed down. And
Right.
where is that held? In Chinese medicine, that's held in the womb. And so
Mhm.
doing these womb healing practices, this is a deeper level, which is what got me out of my previous marriage where I was feeling stuck and not well met, and into a relationship that feels really juicy and alive and
Yeah.
nourishing, where I'm
Yeah.
supported in who I'm here to be. Um, and like the process of getting from one to the other was really going deep into the womb work, where
Okay.
I got to be with my own essence, my own authenticity,
Mhm.
and to clear out anything that's not mine. That's,
Yes.
from generations of trauma, from my own past trauma, sure, from like partners and stories that I took on that I believe that were not true and
Right.
were not in alignment with who I'm here to be. And so some of that deeper work helps to clear that out of the body.
Yeah.
Like we can kind of, do these mental gymnastics of like, noticing a pattern and then creating an affirmation or something. But if it's only in the mental level and it's
Right.
not rooted in the body,
Right.
it's not really going to stick.
Yeah. No,
And I see
that's
that a lot too, where people get
yeah.
stuck and they're like doing the right things and
Right.
trying to change the story. But if they're not also
Yes.
including the body work and
Right.
their own inner sense
Mhm.
of their embodied experience,
Right.
it's it's not going to last. And so that's probably the most powerful thing that I have found to be helpful for really lasting change is to do
Yeah.
that deeper work with the body.
Right. And that makes so much sense. And I think about even just the mental picture of stuffing down our emotions and how it does. It settles down into our lower like abdomen and womb area.
Right.
That makes so much sense. And I think that what I didn't realize until recently was that, our emotions that we shove down or get trapped in our body are literally like balls of unresolved or unreleased energy that holds things back. And so I think that there's so much to be said about how you can't just muscle through it with your mind. Like there
Right.
very well might be these energetic blocks that have attached themselves to various parts inside of your body. And what's also so fascinating that I'm learning about is the generational things that we literally can have those energy blocks and those traumas energetically passed down from generations ahead of us. And so we might have these things that are holding us back, but they're not even ours to hold back. They've been passed
Right.
down to us.
Which can be
And
so frustrating.
yes, and so you feel stuck, right? But then once you recognize that, oh my gosh, like my grandma's trauma is showing up in my body and it's
Yeah.
impacting my ability to show up as my best version of myself. Something as simple as doing some of this energy work can release those things that are holding you back. And I think that oftentimes, again, we try to muscle through it with our brain. And I love how you called me out on that in the sense that I definitely didn't give our body as much respect as I needed to because we don't always have all of the control inside of our mind. Our mind is so powerful, but
Right.
there
There's
very
there's the
well
whole gut brain.
yes, the God exactly, exactly. And I just think that it's so cool that when you feel stuck, like there are ways that you can get unstuck from things that really were not your fault or you
Right.
didn't know better, but they're still there and you can learn how to release it so that you can start performing at your best. And I would love for you, I know that some of our listeners are going to only be accessing this on the podcast version, but we do have access to the video version on YouTube. Would you be willing to show us how to do a kidney breath so that if anything somebody can get out of today's
Yeah.
conversation is just something very simple that they can start to execute just literally today?
Yeah. So, you want to be in a comfortable
Okay.
position
Okay.
and ideally, tuning in. You can do this lying down, but sitting or standing is great.
Okay.
The kidney channel starts at the bottom of the foot. So you're kind of
Okay.
bringing the energy of the earth up through the legs,
Okay.
through the pelvis, and into the lower back. Like just imagining that energy filling the kidneys. And it can help if you put your hands on the lower back, or maybe one hand, depending how comfortable that is. Um, and then just taking a deep inhale through the nose and bringing that breath all the way down, letting it actually expand your lower back. So you can feel the lower back expand on the inhale and release on the exhale. And if you can bring in a sense of a blue light, that's the color of the water energy in Chinese medicine. Inhaling bright blue light or vapor, letting that fill the kidneys, just bathing them, reminding them of that resource. And on the exhale, letting it condense so that water can be held there. Inhaling, breathing deep into the kidneys, feeling the lower back expand, letting the kidneys be bathed with that bright blue light. And exhaling, letting that condense. It can kind of condense into a ball of blue energy in the lower back. And just noticing how that feels. And just another breath, inhaling, bright blue light, and exhaling, letting it condense. Just imagining that that water is recharging the kidney batteries. You're filling up that tank, that reservoir of your resource. And then usually when I do this, I actually have people do a gauge, like you have the battery
Yeah.
power bars
Yeah.
on your phone. And usually just doing a few kidney breaths will bring up, how many
Yeah.
bars of energy you feel
Yeah.
available after just a few breaths.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
I just find that that was so powerful. Like I could feel everything that you were describing. So when you mentioned that you do guided meditation, like you're really good at this. And so you guys, I hope that you all were able to get out of this conversation as much as I did. Jem, is there anything else that we haven't had a chance to touch on that you really want to make sure that we mention?
And yeah, I think the other thing that it really is resourcing and healing is to have that deep inner compassion for yourself.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think maybe 90% of the work that I do with people is reflecting that compassionate presence
Oh,
and helping them tune into their own compassionate inner presence too, so that, when we have those times of feeling stuck, we can let ourselves sort of soften and expand and just be compassionate for whatever is there that may or may not be ours. Like, it could be our ancestors, it could be from past trauma, maybe it is from, choices we wish we hadn't made, but we still can bring compassion to that. We're human and we're growing and learning. Um, and that's one thing I talk about also in the online course that I have about, it's called Thriving Beyond Trauma, and it is bringing a lot of these practices to life, and there's a piece about that that brings in more compassion and more playfulness,
yes.
to let it be a dance that we can be in,
Yeah.
with curiosity and compassion and playfulness. Like, that's how we have wiggle room to get unstuck.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I have just enjoyed our conversation so much. You've given me so many tools, and I can't wait to dive into all of your resources so you guys can access all of them inside the show notes. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and then leave a review and let Jem know exactly what you loved about this episode and what you took as your next tool to get you unstuck. It's always so much fun to read those. And it's also really, really fun when you guys take screenshots and share these episodes out in your stories. Tag us and let us tag you back and share us, with your network, and we'll share you with ours. It's so much fun to interact with you guys so that it feels like this really cool Unstuck community. And, please, 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 if you are feeling stuck and you don't know how to get yourself unstuck in life or in business, please don't hesitate to reach out to me because none of us, Jem or I, do not want you guys to stay stuck. So this is such a gift for us to be able to help you on your journey. So one of the things that I always do, Jem, is I ask the guests to think of a question for the audience to ponder to get them from where they are to where they want to be. What kind of question would you have them start to think about?
To get from where they are to where they want to be, I always invite people to come back to their own essence, and
Mhm.
so we can kind of clear out the thoughts, and
Yeah,
sometimes it can help to write it out, and
yeah,
then, like, tune into the feelings sort of held in the heart, maybe the solar plexus, maybe write those out, and then go deeper to that lower belly, lower back, pelvic energy, and ask there, what am I knowing? What do I know is true with no fear, no questions? What am I knowing is the next thing that I need, if it's that I need to do or need to be or want to feel, coming back to the presence aspect of how I want to feel and really embodying that and going where that is supported in life is really helpful. And you have the answer. We have the answers within
Do.
us,
Yes.
and nobody else can tell you.
Yeah.
And so coming back to your own inner listening and asking, what is it that I need, that I know that I am ready for, that I know without a doubt here and now?
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love that so much. That is going to be powerful, and I want you guys to do your homework and make sure that you're sharing this episode out with anybody who needs it. Jem, thank you so much for being here. You guys, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you here at the same time next week. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Unstuck podcast. I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you. And don't forget to check out the show notes if you want to get into my private club, the Better Club, to be able to learn better ways to be better, do better, and have better. So until next time, keep showing up. Let's get unstuck together. Have a great day.